What's up, guys? Now that you had a nice flashback to 2007, welcome to the Unnamed History Show, where we teach history the way they won't teach you in school. This is the first episode of the series, so things are probably going to seem weird starting out while I work out the kinks of this sort of thing and try and get it to the right format and editing and everything that I want. However, I had this idea come to me while I was at work and immediately started working on how to put this video into action. Today's video is going to be discussing the historical accuracy and inaccuracies of the movie 300. Now, as I started preparing for this video, I realized a major flaw in my video plan. I've actually never seen 300, meaning that I hope you really enjoy this video because it cost me $4.32. If you want to see Rise of the Empire, which is about another battle during the Greek period, go ahead and leave a like and I'll do it. This also means, however, that throughout this video, I have a bit of my reactions of 300 mixed in, so I hope you enjoy. With that being said, let's get right into it. 300 opens up by exploring the life of a Spartan. As portrayed in pop culture, Spartans were bred to be soldiers. So this is pretty historically accurate. I know they're doing it for the movie, but pretty much all Spartans were... Spartan males especially were born to fight. It was much like you saw kind of in America during periods like the from the 1920s to say the 1960s, where the men were more military and did the working jobs while the women stayed behind and they took care of the house. They fed maybe the other female kids and, did all of the daily chores and things like that. Now, a common misconception is that if Spartans were sick, they were thrown off mountaintops. This is simply untrue and largely debunked. If Spartans were seen sick or unfit for battle, instead of being thrown and sacrificed, they were instead left like orphans abandoned on hillsides. So we have our first historical inaccuracy here. Like you see in movies and video games and any kind of pop culture, the main myth is that Spartans, if they were sick, were thrown over a mountain. But there definitely wouldn't be a mountain like this that just has a cluster of skulls, nothing like that. For those not abandoned, they were taken away at age 7 to start training called the Gingeyy, and thrown into the wild at age 12 to learn how to survive. 300 and other pop culture films and video games kind of clump these two periods together, claiming at age 7 children were stealing, fighting, beating each other, and partaking in vicious dogfights in order to survive. In reality, at age 7, the Gingeyy was more like what you would see in something like ROTC or military school. Obviously, fighting is going to be a part of it, but they were also trained in military strategy, resilience, discipline, commitment, and really any other military word you can think of. Once they hit age 12, however, that is when they set out with only the Spartan red cloak on their backs to keep warm, and all other clothing, food, water, shelter, warmth, or any survival need must be salvaged, which is why they have to fight and steal in order to stay alive.
A Spartan warrior society.
So this is actually historically accurate. At age 7, all Spartan boys would be taken from their homes, and they would be, again, as I said earlier, molded into the perfect warriors and citizens, and at age 12, they had to give away all of their clothing except for the red cloaks that you see on their back that are basically their colors, and they have to learn survival from that, with only that being that they're only wearing that piece of clothing.
To create the finest soldiers the world has ever known. The Gingeyy, as it's called, forces the boy to fight, starves them, forces them to steal, or not at all.
So I know I'm beating a dead horse, but again, the clothes that you see on him, he wouldn't have that. The clothes that he would have would be sort of like a red cloak or cape that you see military wear, instead of this sort of like diaper, underwear, cloth that you see on him right now. For the majority of the film, the movie focuses on August of 480 BCE, or before Common Era, in the Battle of Thermopylae, which sounds sort of like a Monopoly game, which that involves thermometers, but anyway. For those that don't live in Europe or aren't geography majors, this is Greece, and this is Mount Thermopylae. This map also shows you where Sparta and Athens are, which, as you may have guessed, we'll be talking about a lot in this video. The Spartans were largely outnumbered, but they still managed to hold out for 3 days and 3 nights under Leonidas I, which might or might not be the unconfirmed origin of many novels and stories claiming that the heroes survived for 3 days and 3 nights.
It's said that he lasted for 3 days and 3 nights to buy his comrades enough time.
What was the reason for this conflict, you may ask? Well, this battle took place during the Greco-Persian Wars, which, exactly as the name would suggest, were wars between the Greeks and the Persians. Darius I, a person whom I could do a whole video on, had practically taken over all of Europe and wanted to take over Greece as well. Historians don't understand exactly why he would attempt this, but the most common reason agreed upon is that Darius was a cocky guy and just wanted another trophy for his mantle, as well as earlier he had fought off most of the rebels and maybe just wanted to finish them off for good.
It was King Leonidas himself who provoked it.
So, earlier they said it was King Leonidas that provoked it. You can take this two different ways. You can think literal, or you can think, obviously, exaggeration because the person talking is telling a story. Leonidas did not obviously cause the war. There were rebels before the Greco-Persian Wars even began, and Darius had battled most of the rebels and begun to make their army, their size, I should say, decrease. Later, Darius decides to go back to try and kill off the rest of the rebels, which starts the Greco-Persian Wars. Therefore, the beginning of these wars had nothing to do with Leonidas. However, most of the Greek nations did immediately surrender, besides Sparta, Athens, and the other ones we'll see in here. Therefore, you can take the exaggeration route, which is because Sparta obviously didn't surrender. That's why he's saying that Leonidas brought on this battle to them. So it depends on which way you look at it. This can either be historically accurate or not historically accurate if you take it super literal or an exaggeration. But just wanted to put that in there. Now, again, I could spend a whole video on the Persian Wars in depth, but right now we're just going to hone in on the specific Battle of Thermopylae. Within a couple of years, Darius did what all kings do, which is he died, leaving a name you might recognize more in power: Xerxes. Hey guys, so I forgot to mention while watching the movie that they also depict Xerxes as a bald and hairless guy, when in reality he was actually heavily bearded, much like you see in Leonidas. So I'll go ahead and put in here some pictures between the movie and what Xerxes looked like in real life. So one of Xerxes' first acts as king was to attempt what Darius failed at, which was take over all of Greece. He first sent out messengers to all the lands of Greece to allow them to diplomatically surrender. Most nations did, but as you may have guessed, Athenians and Spartans' response to this was to drop the messengers down wells and pits, which was the inspiration for one of the most famous scenes in cinematic history.
This is Sparta!
Alright, so I know people are going to kill me if I don't address this, because this is the most probably famous scene in the entire movie. But this actually, surprisingly, is historically accurate. I don't know necessarily if they obviously kicked people into wells or pits, but they were thrown into pits and wells, the Persian messengers, by Spartans and Athenians, because they would not submit. They were not going to submit to Persia's will. So the falling into the pit or well or whatever you want to call the big circle in the ground here, that actually is historically accurate. They did do this to a lot of the Persian messengers that came. Leonidas knew a battle was approaching and led an army of 300 cherry-picked men to defend Sparta, even though his superiors forbid him to going to battle. This is where our story continues. The decision to defend Thermopylae was actually a crucial military strategy. Thermopylae was the only way into mainland Greece, so if the Persians could not occupy it, or at least could be held back expanding their resources and men, then it meant that the Greeks had a geographical advantage.
Now, we will block the Persian coastal assault by rebuilding the Great Phocian Wall, and from there we will funnel them into the mountain pass we call the Hot Gates. Now, in that narrow corridor, their numbers will count for nothing. Now, wave after wave of Persian attack will smash against Spartan shields. Xerxes' losses will be so great, his men so demoralized, he will have no choice but to abandon his campaign.
So this is perfect. I know 300 has a lot of historical inaccuracies, but this is perfect. This is exactly what they did. As I explained earlier, they funneled them through the mountains because the easiest way to pick off, as anybody that studies military tactics knows, the easiest way to deal with being outnumbered is to funnel them to where you can pick them off in smaller numbers, which is exactly what they're doing. They're causing it to where they can only march in this one tight line. So as he just described, their numbers are divided into waves that they can slowly pick off over time. Hey guys, so I realized while editing that in the main video, I didn't actually compare the weaponry, which I meant to. However, while watching the movie, I did, so I'll go ahead and include that right here. So I want to point out the weaponry and armor here, because it is pretty accurate. The Spartans had the advantage whenever it comes to weaponry. You've heard the term, there's a difference between outgunned and outmanned. Yes, the Spartans were outmanned, but however, they had much better defenses and attack. The Spartans had on bronze armor, which protected a lot of their body and was very strong against the attacks. And as you saw, they had the shields that were big enough to cover most of their body, as well as having a spear. The spear allowed them to hit their enemies from a longer distance, while the Persians, however, had these cloths around them that obviously don't provide as much protection, and they had wicker shields. The wicker shields obviously can be penetrated much easier and doesn't provide as much defense. And they also had shorter shields, so in order to get an attack, they had to get closer to the Spartans, while the Spartans could spear them from a distance, which gave them the advantage.
Persian cowards!
So the Persians did make good use of archers because their ground troops that used swords and melee were weak, as I described before, because of their choice of weapons and armor. However, as you probably could have guessed, there's no possible way that they had this many archers or arrows to blot out the sun, so to speak. Obviously, that's way more exaggerated for movie effect, but the Persians did use archers probably way more than any other army during this period.
The deadliest fighting force in all of Asia. The Immortals.
So they don't say how many immortals are here, but the number for immortals was always 10,000, because not only were they obviously heavily armored and heavily weaponized, but the number always stayed at 10,000 because anytime one died, got sick, was wounded, they were automatically replaced, so that there were always 10,000 on the battlefield. Therefore, the number would never decrease, and they were seen as never dying, hence immortals. And the look of them here is actually sort of accurate, give or take. I don't have much to say on the mask because I couldn't. I'll be honest, and I won't talk out of my butt. I'm not sure about the historical accuracy of how the mask looks. But from their armor, they do almost look like samurai, which is pretty accurate. The armor did look like the armor is similar to what you would see in samurai. Hey guys, me again. So I realized that I didn't really explain what I meant by they looked like samurai very clearly. What I meant is if you look at their shoulders and their waistline, it has a very similar design to what you'll see in Japanese samurai. Even though the samurai obviously use stronger armor like steel, and the immortals use bronze, it's the same kind of plating that you see. So I don't know exactly what this monster-like thing here is supposed to be. It's probably just a ploy for movie making in order for them to create a big bad antagonist that seems impossible to beat, but obviously there wasn't anything like this in the battle. So rhinoceros and elephants, while a common misconception, were not used in Xerxes' army. That's all I gotta say about that.
They fall by that.
So here they try and show kind of historical grenades, or ancient grenades, I should say. As you might have guessed, these weren't a thing. Again, that's really all I have to say about it. It's kind of like a Michael Bay. Even though this movie is a Michael Bay, it's kind of like a Michael Bay ploy just to add some extra explosions and stuff in for the movie. Again, elephants, same thing as the rhinos. A common misconception I hear from my friends and everyone online is that the 300 Spartans were the only people that were there. It should be known that, quote, the Greek forces included 300 Spartans and their helots with 2,120 Arcadians, 1,000 Locrians, 1,000 Phocians, 700 Thesbans, 400 Corinthians, 400 Thebans, 200 men from Phlius, and 80 Mycenaeans, end quote. This brings the total to about 6,000 men. Xerxes' army, however, is controversial in size, with numbers being as high as 250,000, but the low end is estimated around 60 to 70,000, so we'll just stick with that for right now. However, geography gives the Spartans the advantage. The mountains went into the sea, meaning there was only one path for enemies to come through, like a funnel. The path was also fortified with a makeshift wall from the local Phocians, making the number difference negligible. The sea was occupied with thousands upon thousands of Persian ships, but they could only survive in shallow water, so harsh sea or storm would destroy them, which is exactly what happened a few days prior, which they show in the movie with Zeus coming down with the wrath. The Athenians had strong naval ships built from minerals found in their mines all over the city-state. This allowed the Athenians to target and draw the attention of Persian ships while the Spartans fought on land at Thermopylae.
Let's watch these motherless dogs as they're embraced by the loving arms of Greece herself.
So the Spartans were actually assisted again, as I said, by the Athenians. While the Spartans here were mainly on land, um, the Athenians used a lot of their navy to battle the Persian ships that you see in this scene in order to not let the land troops be overwhelmed by the ships.
Zeus stabs the sky with thunderbolts and batters the Persian ships with hurricane wind.
So this is accurate. A large majority of the Persian ships were lost to storms earlier, because these ships can actually only travel in shallow water. Any harsh waters or storms are going to wreak havoc on these ships. And so a storm came through, which is what they're showing now, that wiped out a large percentage of the Persian navy, which is why they're saying that Zeus is now on their side, taking out these ships. Xerxes offered the chance for the Spartans to surrender without a battle multiple times. Leonidas, in response, said the most badass line of all time, "Molon lebe," or translated in English like the movie, "Come and get them," to which the battle ensued.
Spartans! Lay down your weapons!
So I can't, but Xerxes actually led his army in and did allow the Spartans multiple chances to surrender, and Leonidas in return said "Molon lebe," which means "come and get them," which is so fucking badass. So hopefully they show that here.
Come and get them!
And there, all of the Spartans chosen were the best fighters and bodyguards for the king, all with male heirs in the event of their death. The Greeks were holding their own for a while until something happened that the mafia and restaurants hate equally. There was a rat. Ephialtes had given Xerxes a way around the path, which dismantled the entire use of the funnel idea to kill off Xerxes' numbers. I can't show most of this scene because, again, YouTube guidelines, and this movie's rated R, so it's showing a lot of topless women. But Ephialtes here is giving away the plans to Xerxes and where they can be outflanked, which ultimately leads to their defeat. So Ephialtes is screwing up here. So Xerxes actually did let Ephialtes lead the army of immortals against Sparta for his help at revealing their plan, so that is accurate. Most of the Greeks retreated except for Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, which makes them so famous.
Let every Greek assemble know the truth of this. Let each among them search his own soul. And while you're at it, search your own.
So this is the depiction, of the war council when they know that they have been betrayed. Everybody says that they're going to surrender except for the 300 Spartans that were already there, which is why many think that there were only 300 Spartans to begin with, which, as I explained before, simply isn't true. But the 300 Spartans do stay behind with a few other thousand, which is why the movie is called 300 and why the 300 are the most remembered.
My men will leave with me.
What happened afterwards? Well, they actually held out and they won. No, just kidding. They lost. I mean, 70,000 versus 300, are you kidding me? Their only shot was the geographical advantage to funnel them, which was now given up. So why do we talk about the Battle of Thermopylae and glorify Leonidas and his 300 when they lost? Well, the same reason we talk about things like the Alamo. It's a classic story of never giving up and dying for whatever you care about. It also helped create the Spartan legend, or win or die on the battlefield and never retreat.
Fought countless times. Yet I've never met an adversary who could offer me what we Spartans call a beautiful death. I can only hope, with all the world's warriors gathered against us, there might be one down there who's up to the task.
So, as they explained before, the most glorious of deaths is dying for Sparta, and that's why he's smiling, because he welcomes death openly. You can show no fear, and dying for Sparta is glorious. So, how accurate is 300? I'll give it about 4 out of 10 spears. While some things are accurate, this is obviously more for entertainment and not a documentary. The movie isn't even solely based off the battle. It's actually based off of a book by Frank Miller. So things are blown out of proportion for entertainment effect and leaves many holes in the story. And with that being said, I'll call that a video, and I'll see y'all in the next one.